Good morning, everyone. Today is October 1st, and it's Treaty Day. And also, October is Mi'kmaq History Month. Wabanaki lands and the nations that lived there through the early 18th century. The Wabanaki include the Mi'kmaq Nation, Wolastoq Maliseet Nation, Passamaquoddy Nation, Penobscot Nation, and Abenaki Nation. Mi'kma'ki, the land of the Mi'kmaq. Why treaties? Wabanaki peoples occupied land for over 13,500 years. Wabanaki peoples pushed off traditional territories when the Europeans arrived. And there was conflict, over 100 years of violence between settlers and the Wabanaki, Mi'kmaq, Wolastoq, Passamaquoddy, Abenaki, and Penobscot. Peace and friendship treaties were created. On the East Coast, peace and friendship treaties were signed between the Mi'kmaq, Wolastoq, Passamaquoddy, and the British Crown. These were signed before Canada was formed in the 1700s. The British Crown began entering treaties, then hostilities encouraged cooperation. As the British and French competed for control of North America, treaties served as strategic alliances. October 1st, 1752, Treaty Day. Why celebrate Treaty Day? The Treaty of 1752 designated October 1st as the date on which the Mi'kmaq people would receive gifts from the Crown to renew their friendship and submissions. In 1985, the Supreme Court of Canada affirmed the Treaty of 1752 was still strong, and in 1986, October 1st was officially proclaimed as Treaty Day to commemorate the unique relationship between the Mi'kmaq and the Crown. By celebrating Treaty Day, we are giving thanks to the Mi'kmaq and the Crown for signing treaties of peace and friendship. It commemorates the relationship that our ancestors established with the British in the spirit of peace, friendship, and equality. The Treaty of 1752, when the English arrived in Mi'kma'ki, the Mi'kmaq homeland that includes present-day Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Island, central and eastern New Brunswick, the Gaspé Peninsula, Newfoundland, the Mi'kmaq and the Crown signed treaties of peace and friendship so they could live in harmony and peace. The 1752 treaty showed the Crown's intentions to make peace, provide trading posts, and protect the land and way of life for the Mi'kmaq people. The treaty also designated October 1st as the date on which the Mi'kmaq people would receive gifts from the Crown to renew their friendship and submissions. Treaty Day also said, the said tribe of Indians shall not be hindered from, but have free liberty of hunting and fishing as usual, and shall have free liberty to bring for sale skins, feathers, fowl, fish, or any other thing. From the 1752 Peace and Friendship Treaty. The images illustrate the importance of the fishery for the Listugush Mi'kmaq First Nation. We will now watch a video called Reflections, 20 years after the Donald Marshall decision between Donald Marshall and the Supreme Court of Canada.
Hi, and welcome to our video on the commemoration of Donald Marshall Jr. decision from 1999. One of the things that we want to talk to you about today is how the Marshall decision has impacted our communities of Gaspegawaga. Donald Marshall Jr. was fishing eels, and he was charged actually with a couple of different offenses. One of them was fishing eels without a permit, fishing eels out of season, and selling eels. And what he did was he actually took his case all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada, and he won the decision, which changed the lives of all of the Mi'kmaq in Gaspegoagee and in Mi'kma'ki.
Yeah, back in 1999, we knew there was a court case coming, but we didn't know how it'll end up. When Donald Marshall Jr. It was a test case that was brought by, I think it was Nova Scotia Chief and Atlantic Policy Congress at that time, so that was helping him through these court cases, but it was for illegal fishing appeals that led to the Marshall Agreement back in September 1999. So they had to start negotiating with First Nations in Atlantic Canada. That was including our area too, Listuguj, Gascabegia, and Gaspé.
Our interest in the Marshall decision started before the Marshall decision actually came down. I was watching it, keeping up in the newspapers and on the internet. When I found out that the Marshall decision was positive for the natives, at that time I told my brother, I said, well, we grew up in a fishing community, so we were always interested in fishing. And I told my brother at the time, maybe something may happen that we will be able to have a chance to fish. We both contacted our band at the time, and they said at that time they were waiting to actually hear the particulars of what was going to actually happen, you know, with the band and with the licenses, and then we took it from there.
When the decision finally came about that they had purchased a license that was already existing, we made clear our interest in fishing, and we passed through an interview process, and we were the first two hired on the lobster boat starting in the year 2000 in this area.
Donald Marshall Lansall siga ni band officer go John Martin do you know Sami with Betkinwadu siga bait as staff we know the court case Marshall so when well die do you all gain them kabay club is been no light recognize a lot of guys a great similar light would you school didn't know because nice harvest out so
Well, I worked for Gascabegiak at the time. I was the employment and training coordinator, and we worked with the fisheries department pre-99, pre-Supreme Court ruling of the Marshall decision, because we wanted to have community members who were trained to run the lobster boats on their own. So what we did was we provided such trainings as how to fish the bait to catch, how to make lobster traps from the wooden techniques of the old techniques. Now they're all metal. Mm-hmm. We also sought out other fishermen that were getting ready to retire, the non-fishermen within the region, and we put many of our men as mentorships with them for over an extended amount of time, which would have been about maybe 3 seasons before they were actually able to run the boats on their own. And back then we started off as privatizing the boats, because we just felt that people would be more readily available to go out and make their own livelihood. It wasn't a very lucrative lobster season back then, and now it's quite lucrative. So now we have some boats that are privatized, and we have 2 boats that are communal boats that provide also employment for our people. And the privatized boats no longer have smaller leases. They actually give a percentage back to the community, so the dollars do go back to communal. Don't know what year the lobster hut was open, but I remember back then that there was a research going on to develop a business plan in order to have a fish market.
Ever since the Marshall Agreement we had, when we all started fisheries over here, it started off really small, yeah. And as we progressed, it grew, and Right now, fisheries, I'm sure, employs about 60 people in the community.
Okay. Wow.
With lobster fishing, crab fishing, shrimp fishing.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, we first started off, we had two crab boats.
Yeah. Okay.
Now I think they got 4. And here we had 3 lobster boats, now we got 5.
Yeah.
And on a daily basis, they bring their catch over here. We store it in our cold room. When we first started 5 years ago, all we had basically was just a loaner truck, like what we have here, and a cold room, the size maybe 8 by 14. So that later that summer again, he also asked, "Can you get bigger?" Well, I said, "Well, if we want to get bigger, you're going to have to purchase some sort of system, and we're going to have to expand our cold room because it was only 8 by 14." He said, "All right, we'll work on that next fall." And the following year, our directors of fisheries found some fundings, and they bought a system that can hold 5,000 pounds of lobster. And we got that set up. Again, the chief wanted bigger. He said, "Can you get any bigger?" I said, "Well, it's up to you guys if you want to buy the system." So they went and bought another system that can hold 35,000 pounds of lobster. First year when we started, like I said earlier, first year when we started, there was 2 of us.
Yeah.
And as we grew, and as the chief wanted our system to get bigger, well, we employed another driver. And then from there, we had built the lobster hut, and we employed 4 people over there. And then it got bigger the year after,
Yeah.
and we employed 4 more people down there, and a manager, and it continued to grow. So we hired 4 more people on the boats as well,
Yeah.
to fish with the
Yeah.
fishermen.
I've been involved in the fisheries through the Marshall Agreement since 2001. Proud to be there because what it gave to our community, gave so much to our community. The fisheries gave us so many employment, so much income, so much economy development. Just in the fisheries, we probably have approximately about over 30-some people working just in the fisheries. Also, we were through all that in the upgrading of, we had a fleet and all that was signed and negotiated with the government. But the fleet that when we got was, we had to upgrade it to make sure to keep it running and keep growing with the industry. And it did create a lot of good because we got new boats, we have new fleets of boats, and it's always bringing more income to the community.
Hi, my name is Pam Isaac and I work for the Stickwish Mi'kmaq First Nation for the last 37 years as an aquaculture technician. I'm a seasonal worker and I've been working with the fisheries department doing all kinds of different projects. When we first started was with trap nets and that lasted for like 16 years, and then we had the Marshall Agreement which came into effect, which brought on a lot of different avenues for the band office, and we actually had a new building that was constructed and built. And when we started, we had nothing. It was just the scientific research. Now we have fleets. We do shrimp fishing, crab fishing, turbo fishing. We produce money and bring revenues back into the reserve, and it's great. And I think we also help the students with their lunch money. And there's new buildings that are being projected and built, and the fisheries department help out with this, and it's all because of the Marshall Agreement.
Well, for us, what I'd like to say to future Mi'kmaq is we went through a period of time, well, most of our lives, when we didn't have any rights. No rights for fishing and no rights to a livelihood. That is something that they'll not have to experience. They'll have the opportunity to have a job. It's there. I believe all the communities will expand. There'll be more fishing. There'll be transformation of the product. There'll be a lot of jobs. And the opportunity for a livelihood for our people will be stronger and increased in the future.
Bonjour, je m'appelle Stéphane Sanson. Et ces dernières années, je me sens beaucoup plus responsable parce qu'on parle beaucoup de la qualité du poisson, que ce soit la qualité du homard. Je veille beaucoup à la sécurité des nouveaux, puis à leur faire une bonne formation. Pour moi, dans ma vie, je me sens plus responsable. puis envers ma communauté, comme pour mon bateau. C'est sûr que ça m'a donné une meilleure qualité de vie. Souvent, j'ai des nouveaux à chaque année. Que ce soit dans mon bateau ou d'autres bateaux, j'ai la chance de les côtoyer. Puis, pour ma part, vu que je suis un ancien, j'essaie de leur donner le goût de pratiquer ce métier-là. Je leur explique que c'est un beau métier, qu'ils ont la chance avec la communauté de pratiquer ça, d'apprendre à partager, puis qu'ils ont aussi la chance, plus tard dans l'année, de pouvoir pratiquer, eux, la chasse et la pêche. C'est ça qui est le fun, c'est que depuis des années, ça n'arrête pas de s'améliorer. La communauté travaille très fort, on essaie d'avoir à peu près les mêmes droits que Restigouche puis Maria. Donc, pour les jeunes, ils ont la chance dans leur vie d'avoir un vrai métier. Un vrai métier, d'apprendre, de partager, puis avoir beaucoup de plaisir.
What does that decision mean for us today? Well, it has given a lot of opportunity to our people to go out and fish commercially, but there's many things about this decision that are still challenging our Mi'kmaq people. For one thing, the decision itself, although it was handed down by the Supreme Court of Canada, was then amended afterwards. And that is something that actually never happened at the Supreme Court of Canada ever in the history of Canada before. That's an important component of this because it really speaks to the ongoing racism that exists between the governments of Canada, Quebec, and Indigenous people all across Canada. They also were pretty vague in some of the descriptions of what the right actually meant. Talking about a moderate livelihood. Who do we use as a benchmark for that moderate livelihood? Our communities are underfunded. Our communities are put at a disadvantage in many social programs. And so you really have to think about what does it mean to have that moderate livelihood. What we want to focus on is that there are many opportunities that can come from the Marshall decision. There's opportunities to get better agreements with the government. There's a recognition from the federal government and from the courts that the Mi'kmaq and Indigenous people have a right, that right exists. And although that decision is great, the Mi'kmaq were very well aware that right existed long before the Canadian government or the Canadian Supreme Court recognized it. It's something that is entrenched in us.
Prior to the Marshall decision, we were exercising our rights. We were also negotiating with the provincial government and also the federal government to harvest the species in our area. And I do believe that was the beginning of, the resource agreements that we have. The government didn't say, okay, you have a right to harvest. They didn't come up and tell us that. We told them that we have a right because of the treaties that we have of 1725 or whatever treaties. And if I don't exercise these rights in harvesting our natural resources, it would be going against the wishes of the spirit of our people that signed these treaties back in the 1700s. See? So it's not just, and with that right, I do feel that we should have some sort of a management plan attached to it. Because if we're going to use that right to deplete or even hinder the growth of our resources, it's going to work negatively. Our culture doesn't allow us to do that. We were always very conscious about the environment and the regrowth of the certain species or vegetation that we have. See, and these are the values that were, left for us to, as Mi'kmaq people, giving back and conserving, you see. So the Marshall decision, it's a great decision for people that, you know, were not used to going out there and exercising their rights for whatever reason. But the rest of Canada have privileges. We have rights. See, that's the key. Now, this is something that we have to, you know, remember when we first started our fishing or our hunting. You know, people were saying, okay, they're going to kill off everything. You know, we have the Cascapedia River to look at. It's one of the best managed rivers in North America. And it's one of the best salmon rivers in North America. Why? Because the Mi'kmaq people are involved in the management plan. You see? So other people benefit. Hunting, we kill only what we need. Cascapedia only killed 45 moose last year. You know, and we have a right to hunt year round. Can you imagine if everybody in Canada had that right?
We need to continue to teach our children about our treaties, making sure that they are in a place to advance the cause that Donald Marshall Jr. started with the Marshall decision. There's been many different cases that have gone to courts that have not been won, but the struggle continues, and it's important that we all work together to ensure that we have a better tomorrow, and that the foundation of that work is our peace and friendship treaties. They are really where the livelihood of the Mi'kmaq come from. And so we honor Donald Marshall Jr. today for his sacrifice and his dedication to the ongoing betterment of the Mi'kmaq. And 20 years later, it's still a challenge, but I think that now we have young people who are growing up to be more educated, stronger, and have the resources necessary to really advance us in the areas of our rights and title. And for me, that is a really big aspiration that I've hoped to continue on with our children, is that making sure that our children really take those treaties, learn them, and live them.
To me, yes, it was a big thing. Marshall case was a big thing. See? And I'm glad it happened. It would have happened eventually. It takes a lot of courage to do that. It also takes a lot of courage to sit on a boat and wait for the game wardens to go after you. See? Yeah. So it was very courageous of everybody else.
I almost died out there, and I don't want to leave my kids yet. It's hard to believe that we have to fight this hard for something that's ours already.